Hello Raptors fans, and welcome to Raptors Report. Today we're going to be discussing the Toronto Raptors, where they stand in the Eastern Conference, early returns on the Thaddeus Young trade, and the injuries that have put a damper on their quest to escape the play-in tournament. Let's jump in. Since the All-Star break, the Raptors have been on a slide. An issue with the team for nearly the entire season has been a lack of depth. That lack of depth has resulted in rotation players playing an enormous amount of minutes, which in turn has resulted in fatigue as well as injuries. The injuries have resulted in huge minutes to the remaining players to stay afloat, and well, you're starting to get the idea. It's a bit of a vicious cycle. The only reprieve the Raptors have had over the past 7 games have been playing against the even more cursed and star-crossed Brooklyn Nets, as well as a good victory against the San Antonio Spurs. In other water-is-wet news, the Casey curse has continued to haunt the Raptors, as they were blown out by the Pistons, who against every other team have earned the reputation of being one of the worst teams in the association. Chris Boucher commented on the Raptors' woes by comparing the Pistons to the power-stealing Monstars, mentioning that the Raptors appear to lose their basketball skills when playing against their Detroit nemesis. The reason for the recent struggles are rather obvious. Number 1, 2 of the best Raptors players are injured. Number 2, the Raptors lack depth, especially at guard. And number 3, Gary Trent Jr.'s inconsistency has come at exactly the wrong time. For point number 1, it's pretty easy to understand. Fred VanVleet, the Raptors All-Star, has led the league in minutes per game for the majority of the season, and his knee requires maintenance and rest in order to avoid surgery. OG Anunoby's string of bad luck has also continued, as he fractured one of his fingers on a dunk attempt. His play suffered, especially his shooting, and after some tests, the fracture was discovered. OG's injury history is probably the hardest to explain to casual fans, who insist that he's injury-prone. Now, unless there's a medical condition associated with unluckiness, I don't think that there's any way that a hip pointer, a broken finger, a knee injury, and a ruptured appendix have anything to do with one another. If you think that they are connected and have actual medical evidence that suggests that these injuries are in any way related, please let me know. As for point 2, I, along with the rest of the people paying attention to the Raptors this season, have bemoaned the Raptors' lack of depth. One interesting wrinkle is the emergence of Malachi Flynn, who in Fred VanVleet's absence began to show a level of competency that I was starting to think was a product of my imagination, much like the rest of the Tampa season. Unfortunately, he also got hurt, and the Raptors had to turn to rookie forward Scotty Barnes to run the show at point guard versus Cleveland. Compounding things is that Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby are 2 of the Raptors' best shooters, meaning that teams have begun to shrink the floor and pack the paint, daring the Raptors to shoot the ball. This has meant that Pascal Siakam, who's having a resurgent season and looking like an all-NBA caliber player again, has to figure out a way of creating offense against 3, 4, or even 5 players all waiting for him in the paint. The results have been ugly, to say the least. The final cross the Raptors have had to bear recently has been the otherworldly slump that Gary Trent Jr. has found himself in since the All-Star break. In the offseason, I mentioned that Gary Trent Jr. needed to find more consistent methods of scoring the basketball, so that when his shot was off, he could positively contribute on the offensive end. For the first half of the season, he made it his life's mission to make that prediction seem as stupid as possible by absolutely scorching teams from beyond the 3-point line. Since the All-Star break, he has made me feel like a modern-day Cassandra, with his shot looking completely broken and him being unable to get to the line or score at the basket. This regression has come at a time when the Raptors need his floor-spreading abilities more than ever. Currently, the paint looks tighter than a Costco on Black Friday, but with more stealing and more body contact. The last segment in this video will be discussing the early results of the Thaddeus Young trade. When the Thad Young-Dragic swap was announced, I gave the trade a TBD, which apparently means that I'm a huge hater, and it's a relief that I'm not in any way associated with the team. Thank you. Being the absolute coward and homer that I am, While I outlined issues with the trade, the Raptors needed a guard, Thad is old, the pick swap was a real cost, etc., I also said that I had faith in the Raptors front office and that I was willing to see if Vision 6-9 was a strategy worth investing in. The early returns have been pretty mixed, and on some nights he looks old and completely out of place, and on others he's bringing hustle, shooting the corner three effectively, and doing the little things he's been known for. I also happen to think that the 54% he's shooting on threes is unsustainable. Call me crazy. This isn't exactly Kyle Korver's shooting mechanics we're looking at here. So now that we've addressed the issues surrounding the team, perhaps we should get to the part where we talk about the future. The Raptors are currently in the play-in tournament. They just lost to the team ahead of them in 6th, the Cavaliers, who hold the final spot in the actual non-play-in tournament playoffs. The teams behind the Raptors, the Hornets, Nets, Hawks, and Wizards, all have been very inconsistent and look unlikely to push the Raptors below the final play-in spot at number 10. The teams ahead of the Cavs, the Bucks, Sixers, Heat, Celtics, and Bulls, all look like they will comfortably make the postseason. So, this leaves the Raptors in the play-in tournament in all likelihood. Many predicted this at the start of the season, and it looks like that is what is going to happen. And that's this week's episode. If someone had told you the position the Raptors are currently in at the beginning of the season, would you be happy or upset? Do you foresee the Raptors ending up in the play-in tournament? Will they be too good or too bad to make it there? Let me know your thoughts here in the comment section or on Twitter, where you can reach me at rapsreport. Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video, as it helps the channel grow. And as always, thanks for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.